My name is Emily Harper. 2 weeks ago, my world shattered. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday. I kissed my husband goodbye that morning without knowing it would be the last time. The accident happened fast. A phone call, a blur of sirens, and then silence. The kind of silence that crushes you. While I was identifying his body at the morgue, my father, my own father, was out on the golf course, laughing, toasting his latest promotion like nothing had happened. He didn't answer my calls, not even a text. I needed him. I was alone, drowning, desperate for something solid to hold on to. But instead of a lifeline, I got a cold shoulder. That day, something inside me broke, not just from grief, but from betrayal. And what I didn't know then was that this was only the surface. What lay beneath would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, family, and the truth behind my husband's death. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 34, and until 2 weeks ago, I thought I had everything: a family, a purpose, a man who made ordinary days feel extraordinary. I live in Seattle and work as a school counselor. It's not glamorous, but I love it. I love kids. I love listening to them, helping them carry the heavy stuff when no one else can see they're hurting. Maybe because I remember what it felt like to carry my own. My husband, Daniel, was a firefighter. You know the type, the one who'd run into the fire when everyone else ran out. But he wasn't just brave in uniform. He was brave in the quiet ways, too. In the way he held my hand when I couldn't stop crying after our miscarriage. In the way he'd lie on the floor for hours playing Legos with Owen, never checking his phone. In the way he kissed my forehead before every shift and told me, "Whatever happens, you and Owen are my home." We married young. Too young, some said. We were 22 and broke, but in love and stubborn. I got pregnant right after our honeymoon. I thought we were lucky. We weren't. We lost the baby at 10 weeks. I'll never forget the way Daniel held me in that hospital bed, whispering that we'd try again, that we'd keep trying. And we did, for 6 long years. Ovulation charts, hormone shots, doctor appointments that felt more like war zones than hope. Then Owen came, our miracle, our whole world wrapped up in a blue hospital blanket. I remember Daniel crying so hard he couldn't speak. He just kept kissing my hand like we'd been given the universe. And for 7 years, we built a life around that little boy. We weren't rich. Our house was small, full of mismatched furniture and hand-drawn pictures on the fridge. But it was ours. Daniel would come home from 24-hour shifts and collapse on the couch, soot still in his hair, arms open wide for Owen's flying tackle. We ate burnt pancakes on Saturdays. We sang off-key on road trips. We danced in the kitchen. It was messy. It was beautiful. And then came Monday. Just an ordinary Monday. I remember the weather, overcast with that weird silvery sky Seattle gets before rain. Owen didn't want to wear his jacket. He was mad because I packed carrots instead of chips in his lunchbox. We were walking to school, hand in hand, him still pouting, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. I shouldn't have. It was the station chief. He was calm. Too calm. "Emily, there's been an incident at a warehouse in South Seattle. There was an explosion. Daniel was inside. He saved 2 workers, but he didn't make it out." I didn't hear anything after that. I collapsed in the school parking lot. My legs gave out like someone cut the strings holding me up. Owen started crying, not understanding. A teacher ran over. Everything blurred, people's mouths moving, hands reaching for me, Owen screaming my name. My heart shattered, but the world didn't stop. It kept going, indifferent. I remember fumbling for my phone with shaking hands. I called my mom, no answer. I tried again, nothing. Then I called my dad. He picked up. I barely got the words out. I think I said something like, "Dad, it's Daniel. He's gone. I need you." His voice was light, distracted. I could hear laughter in the background, clinking glasses. He said, "I'm actually on the 14th hole, Em, in Palm Springs. Big tournament. Let me call you back after the game, okay?" He never called back. No one did. That was the moment I realized I was truly alone. The funeral was a blur. So many uniforms, so many folded flags and tight jaws. I remember the fire department chaplain trying to be kind, but I hated every word that came out of his mouth. He died a hero. He saved lives. He served his community. They said those things like they were supposed to patch the hole in my chest, like honor could replace a father, a husband, a heartbeat. Owen didn't cry during the service. He just kept staring at the casket like he was waiting for Daniel to sit up and laugh. Like it was a trick, like maybe this was one of Daddy's games. Afterward, he asked me, "Is Daddy in the sky now?" I nodded. He said, "Then I'll build a rocket and go get him." What do you say to that? How do you bury your husband and still get up the next morning to pack your son's lunch? I went through the motions. People brought casseroles. They meant well, but grief makes everything taste like cardboard. I stopped eating. I couldn't sleep. I just lay there in our bed, his pillow still smelling like him, wondering how the hell this was real. I found his shirt still hanging on the back of the bathroom door. I held it like it could bring him back. I started talking to him at night, whispering things like, "You promised you'd come home," and then screaming into the dark when it all became too much. I waited for my parents to show up. They didn't. 3 days after the funeral, I got a text from my mom. "Sorry we couldn't make it. Dad's been under a lot of pressure. Hope you're hanging in there." Hanging in there, like I was stuck on a ledge, like this was some minor inconvenience, like losing the only man I've ever loved, the father of our child, was just a bad week. I wanted to throw my phone through the wall, because the truth is, it wasn't just Daniel I lost. I lost the illusion that my family would ever be there for me. When it mattered, they vanished. My dad chose golf. My mom chose silence. And I was left picking up pieces with a 7-year-old who still asks if Daddy is coming home. I waited until we were home, just the two of us, curled up on the couch under his favorite blanket, the one with the rocket ships. I held him so close I could feel his heartbeat, and I told him what no child should ever have to hear. Through tears, I said, "Daddy's not coming home, sweetheart. There was an accident. He tried to save people, but he didn't make it." He stared at me, not crying, just trying to compute something his 7-year-old brain wasn't built to process. Then he whispered, "But he promised he'd read me the next chapter tonight." That wrecked me. I wanted to lie. I wanted to say Daniel would still be there for stories, for bedtime kisses, for Saturday pancakes, but I couldn't speak. I just held Owen as tightly as I could while he fell asleep in my arms, confused and broken. I stayed awake all night, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the house and hoping, just hoping, I'd wake up and none of this would be real. But grief doesn't work like that. There's no off switch, just wave after wave of pain, sneaking up when the house is quiet or your guard is down. It hits when you're folding laundry and find one of his socks, when your son asks if you can call Daddy from heaven, when you catch yourself setting the table for 3. In the days that followed, the world moved without me. Friends dropped by, they brought food, said things like, "He's in a better place and at least he died a hero." They meant well, but nothing landed, nothing helped. Daniel's crew from the firehouse stepped up. They organized everything, the funeral, the service, even helped clean the house. They were kind, steady, quietly grieving in their own way. Some of them cried when they hugged Owen. I could tell he didn't understand why all these big, strong men were suddenly so soft. And then there were my parents, or rather, the lack of them. I called again after the first day, hoping maybe, just maybe, my mother would show some sliver of decency. She didn't answer. I left a voicemail. I told them the funeral would be Saturday, that Owen needed them, that I needed them. Their response came the next morning in a text. "We're so sorry, Em. We'd love to be there, but we already made travel plans to Maui months ago. They're non-refundable. We hope the service is beautiful. Let us know how it goes." Let them know how it goes. Like it was a wedding I was live streaming. When I read it, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen, numb. Part of me wasn't even surprised. My parents had always lived in a curated reality, image over intimacy, denial over discomfort. They never liked Daniel's job. Too dangerous, too blue-collar, too beneath the lifestyle they wanted to project. But to skip his funeral? to miss their daughter's darkest hour because of a beach resort? That wasn't just selfish, that was betrayal. When I told Daniel's crew they wouldn't be coming, there was silence. One of them, Jake, I think, shook his head and muttered, "What kind of people?" before walking off. No one said it out loud, but I could feel it, the judgment, the disbelief. Even in their own grief, they were stunned. The funeral itself felt surreal. Owen wore his little navy blazer, the one Daniel bought for Easter. He held my hand like it was the only thing tethering him to the world. The firehouse showed up in full dress uniforms. There were speeches, bagpipes, an honor guard. I don't remember most of it. What I do remember is Owen tugging my sleeve mid-service and whispering, "Can Daddy hear me from inside the box?" I broke. Right there, in front of everyone. After the ceremony, people came up to me one by one. Hugs, condolences, more casseroles. I nodded and smiled and thanked them, even though I felt like a statue. Grief makes you hollow. You move, you speak, but nothing reaches the core. And at the center of it all, I kept thinking, where are my parents? How do you miss your own son-in-law's funeral? How do you abandon your daughter and grandson because of non-refundable travel plans? I don't know if I was angrier at them or at myself for ever expecting better. That night, I sat alone in the living room. Owen had finally fallen asleep after asking, again, if Daddy could still hear bedtime stories from heaven. I told him that maybe if we read aloud, Daddy could still listen. So I did. I sat in Daniel's chair, Owen's favorite book in my lap, and read every word out loud, to the empty room, to the silence. And when I closed the book, I whispered, "Where are you? How do I do this without you?" There was no answer, just the quiet hum of a house too full of memories and too empty of the one person who made it feel like home. I thought the worst was over after the funeral. I thought burying Daniel was the bottom, the coldest, darkest place I could fall. But grief has layers, and sometimes the pain doesn't end with death. Sometimes it leaves you with questions no one wants to answer. 3 days after we said goodbye, I got a call from Daniel's lawyer. He said Daniel had recently updated his will and requested that I come in alone. Alone. That one word stuck with me as I sat in the waiting room of a sleek downtown office, legs trembling, fingers clenched around a lukewarm cup of coffee I wasn't drinking. The place smelled like leather and polished wood, too clean, too detached, like it had no business dealing in something as messy as grief. The lawyer, Mr. Callahan, was kind, older, measured. He offered condolences, slid a thick folder across the desk, and said, "Your husband made some very deliberate decisions before he passed, Mrs. Harper. There's a letter in here for you, and a few unexpected instructions." My pulse jumped. "A letter?" He nodded. "Daniel met with me about 2 months ago, said he wanted to make sure everything was in place if something ever happened. At the time, I thought he was just being cautious. Now, I see it was more than that." He handed me the envelope first, cream-colored, my name written in Daniel's handwriting. I knew it instantly. Slight slant, bold pressure. He always pressed too hard with pens. My hands shook as I opened it. "M, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And I hate that. I hate that you're carrying this weight without me. But there's something you need to know, something I didn't want to burden you with while I was alive. A few months ago, I got a call from your dad. He wasn't calling to check in. He was fishing, asking what our finances looked like, if we had any long-term plans for Owen's inheritance. It was subtle, but I've seen this before. You told me once, remember? About when they tried to guilt you out of your college savings for the family's benefit. I didn't forget. I never will. So I made sure that if anything ever happened to me, our son would be protected. And so would you. I've set up a trust in Owen's name, locked and airtight. Not even you can touch the principal. He'll be safe, even if people start circling. But that's not all. There's one more thing. You'll see her name in the will, Megan Wells. I know how this looks, but trust me, it's not what you think. And when the time comes, you'll understand everything. I love you. I always will. Protect our boy. And please, don't trust everyone who smiles. D. I didn't breathe for a full minute after reading that letter. I just sat there, eyes burning, heart pounding, hands gripping paper like it might float away if I let go. Megan Wells? That name meant nothing to me, at least not yet. Callahan cleared his throat gently. "There's more," he said. "Daniel left instructions to disclose the details of the trust and beneficiaries today, with full transparency." He opened the file and explained that Daniel had split his estate into 3 parts. One went into a trust for Owen, irrevocable, locked until he turned 25, set up to cover education, housing, and health. Exactly what Daniel would have wanted. The second part, a much smaller portion, came directly to me, enough to cover expenses and help us get by. Daniel had assumed I'd continue working, and he knew I wasn't the type to sit still. But the third part? That's where everything changed. It was designated to an anonymous beneficiary. Except it wasn't so anonymous. Her name was Megan Wells, mid-30s, listed with a Seattle address I didn't recognize. No attached note, no explanation, just a name and a legal cut of Daniel's estate. I felt the heat rush to my face. I didn't want to say what I was thinking, but Callahan must have seen the storm brewing in my eyes. "I assure you, Mrs. Harper, Daniel was extremely deliberate in this. He left no personal message about Ms. Wells, but he emphasized that you might have questions. He gave no indication of wrongdoing, only that he wanted this included no matter what." I nodded stiffly, lips pressed tight, but inside, I was spiraling. Who was she? A friend from the past? Someone he'd helped? Or something worse? Something I didn't want to say out loud. I left the office in a daze. The city around me felt unreal, like I'd stepped out of my life and into someone else's story. I walked for blocks without a destination, gripping that letter in my coat pocket like a lifeline. Daniel had always been honest, loyal, steady. But this was a secret, and secrets don't belong in love stories. That night, I sat alone at our kitchen table with a glass of wine and a laptop. Owen was asleep, clutching Daniel's old t-shirt like a security blanket. I typed the name, Megan Wells, Seattle. Dozens of results, a few LinkedIn profiles, a real estate agent, a musician, and one result, just one, that made my blood run cold. A news article, dated 4 years ago. Seattle paramedic honored for bravery after rescuing child from apartment fire. Megan Wells, 30, credited firefighter Daniel Harper for assisting in the rescue. That's when I knew. This wasn't about betrayal. This was about something else entirely. And Daniel, my Daniel, had left me a breadcrumb, a trail he knew I'd follow. I didn't expect them to show up at my door. Not after skipping the funeral. Not after the hollow text. Not after 2 weeks of silence. But there they were, standing on my front porch like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just abandoned me and Owen when we needed them most. My father wore his usual golf club grin, the one he used when he wanted something. My mother stood beside him, oversized sunglasses hiding whatever emotion she didn't want to fake. "Emily," he said, arms outstretched as if we were still playing the role of happy family. "We've been worried sick." I didn't move, just stared. "Worried?" I asked, my voice flat. "About what? The cost of your Maui trip, or how to spin missing your son-in-law's funeral to your friends?" They glanced at each other. My mother stepped forward first, brushing past me into the house like she owned it. My father followed, patting my shoulder like I was some moody teenager acting out. I should have told them to leave. I should have slammed the door in their faces. But part of me, the child who still wanted to believe parents protect their children, let them in. They sat in my kitchen like nothing had changed. My mother made a comment about how charming the house was, then wrinkled her nose when she saw the stack of unwashed dishes in the sink. My father cut straight to the point. "We heard about the will," he said. "It's a lot to take in. We know you're grieving, honey, and we don't want to add more pressure, but we were hoping you might help us out, just something short-term." I blinked. "Help you out?" He leaned in, lowering his voice like he was discussing something sacred. "The new condo in Bellevue. We put down a deposit before Daniel passed, and with the market the way it is, well, we hit a snag with the financing." I just stared at him. I wanted to laugh or scream or cry, but all I felt was cold. "You skipped your son-in-law's funeral," I said. You ignored every call, and now you want money? My mother stepped in, her tone clipped and rehearsed. It's not about the money, Emily, it's about family. Your father and I have always supported you. When? I snapped. When have you ever supported me? When I lost the baby? When I had Owen? When I married Daniel and you said I was throwing my future away? The room went quiet. Then my father spoke, slow and deliberate. I'm only going to say this once, he said. You are not thinking clearly. You've been emotionally unstable since Daniel's death. We're worried about Owen. We're worried about you. I felt it before I heard it, the threat beneath the concern. You're threatening me? I asked. I'm pointing out that if this situation escalates, if you continue to refuse what's fair, we may be forced to contest the will. Legally. As next of kin, we could raise serious concerns about your mental state. I stood up. My chair screeched against the floor. You want to take this to court? I said, my voice rising. Go ahead. Tell a judge you ignored your grieving daughter because you had non-refundable travel plans. Tell them you skipped the funeral and then came begging for money like vultures. Please, let's have that conversation in public. My father's face tightened. He wasn't used to me talking back. Not like this. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Emily, we're just trying to help. No, you're not, I snapped. You never have. You see a number in a trust and think it's yours, but it's not. Daniel protected us from this exact moment. He knew you'd try. Their eyes flicked toward each other again. That look, that silent calculation. I'd seen it before. I saw it when I was 17 and they tried to take the money my grandmother left me for college and invest it in my father's failed tech startup. I saw it when I got engaged and they told me Daniel wasn't the right match and that I could still marry up. And I saw it now. 2 well-dressed people sitting in my kitchen, pretending to care while circling like sharks. Only this time, I wasn't a girl who needed their approval. I was a mother, a widow, and I had something worth protecting. You need to leave, I said, quiet but firm. Now. My father stood. You're making a mistake, Emily. This doesn't have to get ugly. It already is. He paused in the doorway, something icy behind his eyes. You're alone now, don't forget that. And then they were gone. I stood in the hallway for a long time after the door closed, staring at the space they left behind, trying to breathe through the fury in my chest. Daniel had warned me. He saw this coming. He'd tried to shield me, to protect me from a storm that was only just beginning. And now, for the first time since his death, I realized something important. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was at war. I didn't sleep that night. The name Megan Wells played on a loop in my head, each repetition heavier, more loaded. Daniel's letter had warned me not to jump to conclusions, but what else was I supposed to think? He left her money. Real money. Enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to make me question everything I thought I knew about him. I told myself I didn't believe he could cheat. Not Daniel. Not the man who'd built bedtime routines with Owen and still kissed me goodnight even after 10 years of marriage. But grief is a strange thing. It messes with your head, twists your trust into suspicion. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to spiral. I was going to find Megan Wells and get answers. It didn't take long. The news article I found the night before had listed her as a paramedic in Seattle. A few online breadcrumbs later, I had a current address, not far from the city center, a modest apartment complex in Rainier Valley. I didn't call, I just drove. I told Owen I had an errand and dropped him at my friend Jess's house. My hands were cold on the steering wheel the entire ride. The building was older, worn at the edges, with peeling paint and a rusted fence that creaked when I pushed it open. I stood outside apartment 3B for a full minute, debating whether to knock. And then the door opened before I could even raise my hand. She was standing there, late 30s, shoulder-length hair pulled back into a bun, no makeup, tired eyes, a toddler on her hip. We locked eyes. "Are you Megan?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She looked at me for a moment, guarded, then said softly, "You're Emily." She didn't ask how I knew her name. She didn't look surprised. "I was wondering when you'd come." My stomach dropped. She let me in without another word. The inside of the apartment was small but clean. Toys were scattered across the floor, a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich abandoned on the coffee table. The little boy, her son, clung to her leg before retreating to a blanket fort in the corner. We sat across from each other. She offered me coffee. I declined. "I found your name in Daniel's will," I said, not bothering with small talk. She nodded. "I know. He told me he'd arranged it. I didn't expect it to come to light like this, but I guess he knew something we didn't." I leaned in. "I need to know the truth, whatever it is. I need to hear it from you." She looked down at her hands for a long moment, then back up at me. "Daniel wasn't cheating on you," she said plainly. "He was trying to make peace with something that wrecked him." My throat tightened. "Then who are you to him?" "I'm his sister," she said. "Half-sister, same dad, different lives." The room went quiet. I just stared at her. She continued, "His father, your father-in-law, had an affair before Daniel was born. He never told anyone, not your mother-in-law, not Daniel. Nothing. He died with that secret, but last year, after your father-in-law passed, Daniel found an old letter among his things. It was addressed to me. My mother had kept quiet for years. I was raised by her alone. Never knew who my dad was, just that he'd left." She paused, took a breath. "Daniel tracked me down, asked for a DNA test. We did it. And yeah, it was a match. We were family. He didn't say much at first. I think he was still trying to wrap his head around it. I tried to speak, but no words came." She went on. "He started visiting every couple weeks. Nothing dramatic, just coffee. He met my son, helped me out once when I couldn't pay a medical bill. He was kind, quiet, said he wasn't trying to fix the past, just trying to understand it. He told me about you, about Owen, about how much he loved you both. He said he didn't want this secret to be a shadow over what you had." Tears welled in my eyes before I even realized. "He left you money," I said, my voice cracking. "He gave you a part of everything." "I never asked for that," she replied. "He insisted, said it wasn't about guilt, that I was family, and family meant something to him, especially after what happened with your parents. He wanted to draw a line in the sand, to do right by someone for once." I looked around her tiny apartment, at the toys, the sink full of dishes, the tired lines on her face. She wasn't a threat. She wasn't some mystery woman from Daniel's secret life. She was just another person left behind. "You're struggling," I said quietly. She gave a weak smile. "Yeah, but we get by. I wasn't supposed to be part of his story, but he made me feel like I belonged to one for the first time in my life." I sat there for a long time, silent, processing. Daniel hadn't betrayed me. He'd protected us all, even her. He'd carried the weight of his family's past alone and never let it poison what we had. And now that burden was mine. When I finally stood to leave, Megan followed me to the door. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "He talked about you with so much love. He called you the center of everything." I nodded, tears finally falling. "Thank you for being honest." She smiled, the same shy smile Daniel used to give when he wasn't sure if he was saying too much. I walked back to the car, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. Daniel hadn't left behind a mess. He left behind a map, and I was just beginning to follow it. I didn't want to see them again. Not after what they said, not after they threatened to contest the will, to paint me as unstable just because I wouldn't hand over Daniel's legacy like a blank check. But I knew I had to face them, on my terms. So I called. I told them to come over, and this time I wasn't shaky. I wasn't grieving in a haze. I was angry, focused, ready. When they arrived, I was already sitting at the dining table. Daniel's letter was in front of me. The trust documents, the legal papers, every word, every signature, every protection he'd put in place. My father walked in first, confident. Like a man entering a negotiation he thought he could still control. My mother followed, quieter this time, eyes already darting toward the stack of papers. "We were hoping you'd come to your senses," my father said as he sat down. "This situation doesn't need to be ugly, Em." I didn't answer. Not yet. He looked at the documents on the table. "You've clearly been digging into this. That's good. But you need to understand, we're not trying to take anything from Owen. We just need some temporary relief. You're sitting on assets that could help your family. Real family." I leaned forward, calm, clear. "You mean your new condo, your financial mistakes? You haven't asked once how Owen is doing, or how I'm surviving." My mother finally spoke. Her voice trembled. "Emily, sweetheart, we just want what's best for everyone. You're still hurting. You've always been sensitive. This isn't the time to make big decisions." "Stop," I said. Just one word, but it was enough. They both froze. I slid the letter across the table. "Daniel knew this would happen," I said. "He told me. He warned me. He remembered what you did with my college fund, how you tried to guilt me out of everything I worked for. He saw it before I did." My father scoffed, waving the paper away. "That's ridiculous. We've always looked out for you." "No," I snapped. "You've looked out for yourselves, your image, your comfort, your bottom line. You abandoned me when I needed you most, and now you're back because you think there's something left to take." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We're your parents." "And Daniel was my husband," I said. "The man who ran into burning buildings for strangers. The man who died trying to save lives. He didn't just leave behind money. He left behind a legacy. And you think you can guilt me into selling it out?" I stood up. "You can cry. You can call me ungrateful. You can whisper to your friends about how your daughter changed after her husband died. I don't care. I'm done apologizing for protecting what matters." My father's face darkened. "You're making a huge mistake." "No," I said. "I'm finally making the right one." I picked up the trust paperwork and pointed to it. "This is locked. You can't touch it. Daniel made sure of that. And if you try to challenge it, I'll fight you with everything I have. Not just as his widow, but as a mother, as someone who's finally learned how to draw the line." They didn't respond. My father stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was. Maybe he didn't. Maybe for the first time, I wasn't the scared daughter trying to earn his approval. I was a woman who'd lost everything and still chose to stand. I walked to the door and opened it. "You need to leave." My mother hesitated. She looked like she wanted to say something, maybe to ask for forgiveness, maybe to spin another excuse. But she didn't. She just turned and followed my father out. When the door clicked shut, I stood there for a long moment, hands trembling. Not from fear, from release. Daniel had trusted me to protect what he built. Not just money, but the values behind it. And today, for the first time since he died, I felt like I honored that trust. I looked down at Owen's drawing still stuck to the fridge, the one of our family, with Daniel's figure smiling in the middle, holding both our hands. I walked over and pressed my hand against it. "You died a hero," I whispered, "and I won't let anyone shame me out of remembering that. Not even my own blood. I thought I'd shielded Owen from all of it. The tension, the arguments, the slow burning fallout between me and my parents. I thought I was careful, that I kept the doors closed, the voices low. But kids see through everything. The night after I confronted them, I found him in his room, curled up with Daniel's old hoodie. He didn't look up when I came in, just kept coloring. "What you drawing, buddy?" I asked softly. He didn't answer right away, just kept filling in shapes with red and black. His grip on the crayon was tight. "Did you hear something earlier?" I finally asked. Still no response. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Grandpa said you were broken." I stopped cold. My heart sank and I knelt beside him. "I'm so sorry you heard that, Owen. That's not true. People say mean things sometimes when they don't get what they want." He was quiet again. Then he looked up and said something that stopped me in my tracks. "If they didn't come when Daddy died, they don't get to come now that there's money." Just like that. No drama, no hesitation. I stared at him, stunned. He went back to coloring like it was nothing. Later that week, my parents tried to come by again. One last visit, one last attempt to talk things through. I didn't answer the door. Owen did. He walked out, quiet and calm, holding a folded piece of paper in his small hands. He handed it to my father without a word. Then he turned around and walked back inside. I watched from the hallway, my chest tight, afraid of what he'd done, until I saw the look on my father's face. It wasn't anger, it was something closer to shame. After they left, I opened the drawing. It was simple. Crayons on printer paper, a broken heart, a fireman's helmet in the center, and under it, in big block letters, "If you didn't come when Daddy died, don't come now that there's money." I sat on the floor and cried, not because it hurt, though it did, but because in that moment, Owen saw everything clearer than the adults around him ever could. He understood loyalty, he understood grief, he understood love, and most importantly, he understood what we were worth, even if others didn't. That's when I knew there wouldn't be a reconciliation. There wouldn't be some quiet resolution where we hugged and pretended we were still a family. That chapter was closed. I made the call that evening, left a voicemail that said simply, "This isn't healthy, for me, or for Owen. We're going to move forward without contact. I need to protect my son and myself. Please don't reach out again." I blocked their numbers, changed the locks, moved the trust paperwork to a secure location, took back control of my peace. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, it was just necessary. And for the first time since Daniel died, I felt something shift. Not closure exactly, but clarity. I couldn't bring Daniel back. I couldn't undo what my parents failed to be. But I could choose what kind of mother I would become in the wreckage of it all. Strong, honest, and unshakable in my love for Owen. That's the legacy Daniel deserved, and it's the one I intend to protect with everything I have. Grief is strange. It doesn't end. It just changes shape.